Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive with us.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're taking a look at the disappearance of Brianna Maitland. And as always, we assume that you're coming to this deep dive already familiar with the case. But just in case you need a quick refresher, 17-year-old Brianna Maitland disappeared in 2004.
Back in March of 2004.
From Montgomery, Vermont, after finishing up a shift at the Black Lantern Inn.
Right.
Her car was found the next day, just about a mile away, backed into an old barn.
Yeah, that's one of the really mysterious elements of the case.
It is. And it's a case that's just full of strange details and dead ends that have continued to fascinate both investigators and, amateur detectives alike for many years.
Absolutely.
To get us started, what is it about this case that just makes it so compelling and so frustrating? I mean, you would think that a car found abandoned like that would immediately suggest foul play.
Right.
But then when you look at the details, it just makes things so much murkier.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's that wrench that gets thrown into what we think we know about missing persons cases, right? Mm-hmm. Like you said, you see an abandoned car like that. The assumption is, something bad happened. But there are details in this case, in the car specifically, that make it so much more difficult to kind of pin down exactly what happened.
So let's talk about those details. I mean, what exactly was it about this car that makes this so weird?
Well, it's not just the fact that the car was backed into this barn, right? Almost like it was hidden deliberately, like somebody didn't want it to be found, or at least didn't want it to be found very quickly. But it's really what was left inside the car that really makes things kind of strange.
Okay.
So her purse, her wallet, even 2 uncashed paychecks were all left in the car.
Wow.
And, when you think about runaway cases, it's not normal to leave belongings behind, especially money.
Right.
It's actually quite the opposite. Usually folks will take that stuff with them.
Yeah, especially something like 2 paychecks. You would think if you were running away, you would want as much money as you could get.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's a huge red flag.
It feels like someone's trying to make it look like she just walked away from everything.
Yeah.
But why go through all that trouble with the car?
That's the $1 million question, right? Because if you're going to stage a disappearance, you usually want to make things look as normal as possible, not create a scene that screams something's wrong.
Yeah.
Which this car very much does.
So what were the initial theories that the police were working with? Did they have any early suspicions about what might have happened?
So early on, investigators really did explore the possibility that Brianna might have run away. She had dropped out of high school and was navigating some personal challenges, so it was a logical avenue to consider.
Right.
However, as the investigation progressed and they interviewed people who knew Brianna, they started to get a sense that running away, especially leaving everything behind, just wasn't in her character.
Interesting.
So that theory, while initially investigated, didn't really pan out.
So with that theory kind of fading away, what were some other explanations that they started to explore?
Well, the circumstances, especially with the abandoned car and the lack of any contact from Brianna, led investigators to consider the possibility of foul play.
Right.
And so that shifted the focus a bit and brought up a whole new set of questions.
Okay.
Was Brianna taken against her will? Did she leave with someone she knew but under duress? Was this a tragic accident that was deliberately staged to look like something more sinister?
Yeah, it's like a puzzle with half the pieces missing.
Exactly.
Were there any leads or individuals that emerged during the investigation that might shed some light on her disappearance?
There were a number over the years, and unfortunately none of them panned out. There were alleged sightings.
Right.
But nothing concrete.
Okay.
One that's particularly intriguing is an anonymous tip that came in 2012, a full 8 years after Brianna's disappearance.
Wow.
And this tip claimed to know individuals involved in her disappearance.
Okay.
Even provided names.
An anonymous tip after 8 years, that must have been huge, at least in terms of just reigniting the investigation.
You would think so, but unfortunately, no arrests were made. They weren't able to locate Brianna, and it just remains a frustratingly cold lead.
It's just mind-boggling how someone can vanish without a trace like that, especially, we live in a world now where we're constantly connected and leaving these digital footprints everywhere.
Right, and that's what makes Brianna's case so haunting, is that it occurred in such a seemingly ordinary setting.
Right.
We often associate disappearances with remote wilderness areas or dangerous urban environments, but this happened in a relatively quiet rural community.
Right.
Which just adds another layer of unsettling mystery to it all.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does make you wonder about, our assumptions of safety and security. You think a small town would offer a sense of protection, but then something like this happens, and it really just kind of throws everything into question.
Yeah. it does.
The car in the barn is obviously a huge piece of this puzzle. But there's another aspect to this case that I find really intriguing, and that's the possible connection to the disappearance of Maura Murray.
Right, and that's something that a lot of folks have brought up over the years.
Yeah.
Maura Murray disappeared just a month before Brianna.
Right.
And it was about 90 miles away, but both of these cases show some pretty striking similarities. They both involve young women vanishing in rural New England under mysterious circumstances.
Right.
Both cases also involved abandoned vehicles. So a car was found abandoned on a roadside in Haverhill, New Hampshire, while Brianna's, as we've been discussing, was found backed into that barn.
Two young women, similar age, both gone without a trace, both leaving behind these abandoned vehicles, and all within a month of each other. It's easy to see why people, especially online, connect these two cases.
Yeah.
Have investigators ever seriously considered a link between the two?
You know, despite all the speculation and the online discussions drawing parallels between the two cases, no official link has ever been established.
Okay.
However, the timing and proximity of these disappearances, along with the rural settings and the abandoned vehicles, makes it hard to ignore the potential connection.
Right.
It's a question that continues to fuel much debate and speculation.
Yeah, it really does make you wonder if there could be a larger pattern at play, something connecting these cases that we just haven't been able to see yet.
Right.
So circling back to Brianna's case, let's talk more about that car in the barn. Such a deliberate act, almost theatrical.
It is.
What are some possible interpretations of the car being positioned like that? Why go through the effort of backing it into the barn?
Well, there are a few ways to look at it.
Okay.
Some folks suggest it was an attempt to conceal the car, to make it less obvious to passersby.
Makes sense.
Others believe it could have been part of a larger staging effort, perhaps intended to obscure something inside the car, or even create the impression of an accident.
So if we entertain the possibility that someone wanted to make it seem as though Brianna had left voluntarily, why go through all the trouble with the car? Wouldn't it be simpler to just leave it parked somewhere inconspicuous?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's what makes this detail so perplexing. It's almost as if they wanted to send a message, or a cryptic clue, perhaps. But the meaning of that message remains elusive to this day. Right. But it throws a real curveball into the investigation because it leaves us with more questions than answers.
It's incredibly frustrating. So many pieces of this puzzle seem to contradict each other.
Yeah.
We have the seemingly staged car, the abandoned belongings, yet no sign of a struggle or any indication of where Brianna might have gone.
Right.
It's enough to make your head spin.
Yeah.
Have investigators ever considered the possibility that Brianna might have staged her own disappearance?
That's always a possibility in these types of cases, and it's certainly a theory that investigators have explored in Brianna's case.
Okay.
However, the evidence, particularly her belongings left in the car, including those uncashed paychecks, doesn't strongly support that theory.
Right.
It's unlikely someone planning a new life would leave behind such valuable possessions, especially money.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it kind of leads us back to square one.
Right, a mountain of unanswered questions.
Yeah.
Do you think this case will ever be solved? Is there hope that even after all this time, new evidence might emerge that could lead to answers?
I mean, it's hard to say for sure. Some cases remain unsolved for years, even decades.
Right.
And then a new witness comes forward, or, what seemed like an insignificant detail suddenly clicks into place.
Yeah.
And it leads to a breakthrough. And we've also seen advancements in forensic technology that offer a lot of hope, because new techniques can sometimes shed light on old evidence.
It's like they say the truth is out there somewhere just waiting to be uncovered.
Yeah.
There's so many unanswered questions, so many loose ends that need to be tied up. It's a reminder that even in a world of constant surveillance and digital footprints, people can still vanish and just leave behind this trail of unanswered questions.
Absolutely.
And just a void that's impossible to fill.
Yeah, and it's a stark reminder of, I think, the fragility of life.
Yeah.
How quickly things can change, and how even the most ordinary day can take a really tragic and inexplicable turn. And I think it also underscores the importance of vigilance awareness.
Right.
And never taking safety for granted.
What I find so haunting about Brianna's case is the sheer lack of answers.
Right.
It's not just that she's missing, it's the absence of any concrete direction for the investigation to even go in.
Yeah.
No clear motive, no confirmed suspects, no demands for ransom. It's as if she stepped out of her car and into this void and left everyone grasping at straws.
And that's what makes cases like this so compelling, so frustrating, and so important to keep in the public consciousness. You know, cases like Brianna's serve as a reminder to stay vigilant, look out for one another, and to never give up hope for Brianna and for the countless other missing persons whose stories remain untold.
So for all of you listening out there, I want to ask you, what details from Brianna's story stand out to you? What aspects of the case do you find particularly perplexing or intriguing? Maybe you've noticed something that's been overlooked. A tiny detail that could hold the key to unlocking this mystery. Sometimes a fresh perspective is all it takes to see things in a new light.
Yeah, don't underestimate the power of observation and critical thinking.
Right.
We've discussed even seemingly insignificant details can be crucial.
Yeah.
So maybe you have a theory about the significance of the car in the barn, or perhaps the uncashed paychecks spark an idea.
Right.
Whatever your thoughts are, share them, discuss them, keep the conversation going, keep Brianna's story alive.
Because even though she's gone, her story deserves to be heard, and the mystery of her disappearance deserves to be solved.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the baffling disappearance of Brianna Maitland.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope this has sparked your curiosity and encouraged you to think critically about the complexities of this case.
Yeah.
Remember, even the smallest detail could make a difference.
It could.
So until next time, stay curious and keep searching for the truth.